I am the Highland Scribe, scribe to the stones, to the winds, to the bloodlines that walk unseen. Come closer, closer still. You see, the fire's warm. But this tale tonight, this tale runs wild. Now settle as close to the fire as you possibly can, because this tale, oh, this is a cauld tale. No the playful cauld of the first frost, mind you, nor the glittering cold of Christmas lights. This is the kind of cauld that moves, the kind that watches you, the kind that kens your name when the wind shifts. It's a Stewart tale, one of mine, carried across the moors and campsites, and it begins with a young lass by the name of Brigid. Sharp as a hare, so she was, and fearless as the wild winds. You see, she was born with the winter in her blood. Now, this was one of the bad winters, a winter that came early and didn't hold back upon showing its teeth. Brigid's family had stopped on the edge of Rannoch Moor, a place that the locals ca' empty heart of Scotland, where sound dies. Aye, it dies afore your ears even catch it. They pitched their tents and they were close, but somehow they didn't feel close enough. And on the third night, Brigid, she woke to a silence so deep that it felt like it was a pressure upon her actual chest. There was nae wind, there was nae horses snorting, nae shifting of anything, just stillness. It was too still. So she slept outside her tent, her boots crunching quietly in the early frost. And then she saw it. She thought to herself, no, it can't be, surely. A figure walking across the frozen puddles as if they were glass, tall as a pine trunk and skin as pale as the morning ice, hair drifting behind her like cold smoke. No, it can't be. The frost wife? You see, traveller lore says that she writes warnings in the ice. But that night, no, she wasn't writing, she was looking, 'cause her head kept tilting slowly, like a wolf. Smelling and scenting. Brigid hid behind a wheel and, she tried her hardest to be quiet, and she could hardly breathe. But the frost wife caught sight of her. She lifted a hand, and the air around it shimmered. A long crack tore across the frozen puddle at Brigid's feet, moving towards her in a sort of jagged white line. It could only be one of two things, a warning or a claim. Then the frostwife, she whispered something. It was soft and brittle, almost too faint to hear, really, like frost forming upon a windy pane. And after speaking, she just drifted away towards the moor, leaving a trail of white that didn't melt, and Brigid, of course, fled back to the camp and shut the canvas flap tight. But somehow, the cold followed her inside. Now, the frostwife is terrible. Aye, but she doesn't walk alone in those thin weeks between November and Christmas. No. It was 2 nights later, and the moors stirred again. But this time it was the wind that woke her. No the usual moor wind. No, it was a west wind, and it was quite brutal. The wind soaked in seawater and grave cold, and it slammed against the bow camp like a fist. The horses, oh, they stamped their feet and rolled their eyes, the whites bright in the dark. Then came the knocking. Not knuckles. Something harder. Something colder. 3 taps on the canvas flap. Brigid stirred. Her father froze where he lay. Her mother began to pray under her breath. Then another 3 taps. Her father whispered, "Dinna answer. If you answer, you'll see us." But Brigid felt thon called for the frost wife, still clinging to her very bones. The 2 forces somehow felt connected, the threads of the same storm. So she stood, and the moment that she touched the canvas flap, the wind stopped, dead, as if it was holding its breath. Brigid opened it, and there he was, the winter through the west man, a tall, gaunt figure with a coat ripped open like torn clouds, eyelashes crusted with frost, a lantern swinging fae one raw-boned hand, a lantern whose flame bent sideways, ignoring the laws of fire. His voice came out wrong, sort of dragged, like it was dragged across the ice. "Child," he said, "will you spare warmth for one who carries the cold?" Brigid felt her jaw lock, but she nodded, because some part of her, the part that understood the frost wife's whisper, knew refusing him would somehow be worse. So she lifted the kettle of warm tea and a chunk o' the last of their breed. His hands closed over hers when she offered them. It felt like plunging her arm into a frozen loch. The cold crawled across her wrists almost alive. The caller bowed, not with respect, with hunger. Then he leaned close to her ears, and whispered, "She has marked you. The frost wife wants you, you ken. You keep warm, or kept for hersel." And he turned, letting the west wind swallow him whole. Brigid didn't know what to make of this, and she stood there shaking with the cold, staring into the dark night. The next night, snow arrived. Oh, it was thick and choking, unnatural. It felt straight down, no breeze, like it was being placed there deliberately. Brigid woke again, not to silence this time. No, this time she woke to steps, very, very soft steps, slow and dragging. She peeked through, the canvas, and shapes began moving through the tents. The Frostwife walked in front, head drifting from side to side, as though she were searching for something that she had misplaced. Behind her came shadows, dozens of them, not people, not quite. They were like horse-sized silhouettes, with limbs that were too long, sliding over the snow without sinking into it. Brigid's mother whispered, "They've come for what was offered." Her father grabbed Brigid's arm. "You went to the collar. You let him touch you. They're bound to you now, lass." The shadows circled their camp. The Frostwife raised her arm, and every lantern flickered. Every bit of glass that they did have frosted white. Breath turned to steam immediately, hot and terrified. One shadow peeled itself from the group and approached Brigid's tent. Its head scraped along the material, and it leaned in close. Brigid saw her own reflection in the shadow's face, except her reflection smiled back. Her own mirror self whispered, "Come on, come into the cold. She's waiting for you, you ken." Brigid backed away, so fast as she fell over. Her father grabbed his iron poker, the only thing known against spirits, and he struck the shadow. It didn't scream, it did just shattered, like breaking a windy, and the Frostwife turned. If rage can be silent, hers was. She glided towards the tent, and with a speed that made Brigid's heart twist, she pressed her hand at the entrance. Everything began to freeze from the inside out, cracking and bending. And then the west wind roared. The collar walked out of the dark, his lantern swinging wildly. "Thon girl is mine to test," he growled. "You canna take what winter has no finished." The Frostwife, well, she lifted her hand in reply, and the wind froze in mid-air. Snowflakes hung suspended like ash. The two forces, cold and wind, ice and storm, well, they stared at one another. They both turned their gaze towards poor Brigid. Brigid stepped out of the tent. She could barely breathe for the fear that had come upon her, but she walked beside the Frostwife and the collar, boots sinking into the snaw. "If you want me," she said, "then you take me fairly. No as prey, and no as a trick. I'll face your tests, but it ends with me, no my family." The Frostwife touched Brigid's cheek, and she felt nothing. No warmth, no pain, just just an emptiness. Then the caller. He held out his lantern, and the flame inside twisted into a spiral, sort of an eye of the fire, as he called it. He looked at Brigid and he said, "Come out and walk in the cold with us. You see, if your heart freezes, she claims you. If your hope burns, then you belong to neither of us." Brigid inhaled, then stepped forward into the snow. Beyond the firelight, the cold struck her like a blow. Her breath crystallized instantly, and her fingers went numb. Her knees, well, they began to buckle. But she kept walking. She imagined the road ahead. She imagined her family's camp creaking and them travelling and walking across spring muds, and she imagined her mother singing along the road, walking beside the horses, and her father's laugh. She imagined warmth, and slowly, but painfully, the fire in the caller's lantern began to steady. The frostwife, well, she let out a hiss as cracking ice, and she faded into the moor, fair disappointed. The shadows followed her like a bunch of broken puppets being reeled in. The caller, however, gave Brigid a single nod, something like respect. Then he too vanished into the wind. My folks say that Brigid never feared winter again because she learned something older than Scotland, older than the moors, and older than frost itself. You see, winter hunts the unkind, the ungenerous, the cold-hearted, but warmth, real warmth, is a shield, not against the seasons themselves, but against becoming like it. Brigid shared what little she had. She faced what terrified her the most, and winter, for once, stepped aside. We're told as youngins, when the cold tests you, you answer it with fire. I am the Highland scribe, scribe to the stones, to the winds, to the bloodlines that walk unseen. And until the fire burns again, sleep tight, wanderers.